So I've got all my pieces of cardboard cut out. They look like big L's. And now I'm going to be doing some design work on it because I want the outside of them to look like bricks. So I'm taking my cutting mat and just putting it on, and I'm going to be doing lines at 1 centimeter increments all the way up my piece of cardboard. And I'm using the back of a pair of scissors to score the lines. I've got my horizontal lines drawn in like that, and now I'm going to be going and doing the shape of bricks. So my pieces are going to be 2 centimeters long, and they're going to be going one there, and then there'll be one in the middle of those two, so that it actually looks like brickwork. And then our first line we're going to be doing our 2 centimeters, and then we're just going to score on every second line. And then just complete the whole thing like that. So I've got all the patterns going like that, and now for the next one we're going to be going in the middle of the two. So just in the middle, so that gives us our extra row of bricks. So I've got the one piece scored so that they look like bricks. You can, if you want to, cut out small pieces and glue them all on. To paint my walls, I'm going to be using Mars Black and Titanium White, because I've just decanted some onto a small little palette, because I'm going to be using different shades of grey. So we just mix those ones up. So I want one that's quite light, to make it about the colour of cement. So that's quite a nice shade. And now all I'm doing is taking my pieces, and on all the places where I've got a line, I'm just painting along there just so that it can go into the grooves. It doesn't have to be done perfectly because we're going to be painting over that as well. So just paint all the grooves. So pretty much to cover all the grooves, you need to paint your entire piece so that you can get into all those little grooves. Now that my paint is dry, I've taken a really dark colour grey by mixing just a little bit of white with quite a lot of black, and then we're just going to paint that over. Just painting like that, so you can see the light grey still underneath it in all the grooves, and then just paint all your pieces like that. I've just taken some deep red, some medium yellow and black, and we're just going to mix that together to give us a nice brownish black reddish colour. So it's not quite black, it's not quite brown, it's like this really strange looking colour, which is a really pretty colour. And then I've got this tiny little sponge. I'm going to dip the paint in, and we're going to just dab it on. So I've just loaded my sponge, and then we're just going to put a little bit on, just in random places. It looks like that. And just do all the pieces the same. I've mixed a very light colour grey like that, and I've mixed a slightly darker one. So we're going to be using both of them. It's pretty much like we're drawing a 7. So all you're doing is going across the top and then just down. So it's got a bit of a long one, and you're only doing that in the top right hand corner of each of your bricks. And for the darker colour, all we're doing is taking and putting a small little stripe just underneath each brick, like that. So I thought I'd try and show you the difference between the two. So now this one hasn't had the detail painted on it. It's still very attractive. And then this one has had the detail painted on it. So the bricks look a little bit more 3D. To make my hearth, I'm starting off on the floor. The distance that I'm going across is 10.5 centimeters and the depth is 6.5 centimeters, and I've just curved the sides off a little bit. So I've got a piece of cardboard which is a 0.5 centimeter thick, and then I've got another piece of cardboard which is 1 millimeter thick, and on this thin one I'm just going to be drawing random shapes so that it looks like slate. And I'm just using the point of my compass to do that. And then just do the whole thing. So that's what it looks like. And now I'm going to paint it. Now, for myself personally, I've only ever seen slate as the really, really dark colours. So I'm going to just be going with a dark grey. But because I want a bit of a variation in tones going through it all, I'll show you how I'm going to paint that. I've glued my small piece onto my thick piece, and now I'm just going to be taking some masking tape and going around the edges so that I've got a nice clean edge on this side. To paint my slate, I'm using titanium white and Mars black, and I'm just going to mix them to give me a darkish colour grey. So that's quite the grey, and then we're just going to take random blobs and just put them down and then vary the colour so that we've got different colours going through. And then we're just going to blend that. So when I blend, I just roll my brush in that motion like that. So we've got some nice variations in the colour tones now. Just taking a piece of tissue and dabbing it on and then peeling it off to take some of the colour. Because you don't want it to be too thick that you don't see your design underneath. Don't forget to paint the sides. So the paint is all dry. I'm pretty happy with the result of that. As you can see, it looks like slate. To make the floor for my little house, I've just divided my piece up into 4 centimeter by 2 centimeter blocks, and I'm just using the sharp end of the compass, and I'm just freehand drawing them. So I'm doing a straight line and then a curve on each of the corners so that they look like those big medieval blocks, and just do all of them the same. To paint my floor, I'm just using Mars black and titanium white, and all I'm doing is putting 3 blobs of paint onto my piece of cardboard because I wanted to have different variations in the colour. So just like that, and then we're going to just take a big paintbrush. We're going to partly mix the colours and then just spread it all over and just paint it so we've got slight variation in all the colours as it picks up. And just paint the whole piece like that. So I've got the floor painted, and as you can see, doing it that way you get slight variation in the colours. So we've got slightly darker pieces going into lighter pieces, and then we'll just wait for that to dry before we put some detail to it. To add a bit of detail to it, I've taken some black and white and made like a really, really dark grey, and we're just taking that really dark grey and we're going to be just going around each of the stones, and I'm trying to get a slightly wiggled effect on it because it's not really as straight lines, so just going around each of those like that. It's a bit difficult to see that. There you go, there's a better. So just like that around each of the stones. I've got my whole piece painted, and now I'm going to be taking a very light colour grey, so it's just off-white. So it's pretty white. And then we're going to take that one, and on the top right hand side of each of our stones, we're going to just put a highlight on the corner, just like that, and then do all of them the same. It's very difficult to see with the reflection of the light, so that's what they sort of like look like. And now I'm taking some black, and instead of going on the top right, I'm going on the bottom left corner of it, so it gives it a little bit more depth, like that. And then just do all of them the same. For my porch and my mezzanine level, I want to do a wood grain so that this looks like wooden floors. So I'm just going to carve using my little compass point. I'm just going to carve a wood pattern. So I've got my piece of cardboard that I'm going to be using. The whole piece, I've just divided it where I've got the porch and the mezzanine, so it's easier for me to just do it all in one. For my porch, I want it to look like decking, so I'm going to be just using the point of my compass, and I'm scoring at 1 centimeter intervals just right across the page, because I think that the decking would be about the length of that. I've scored my decking part, and for the top part, which is my mezzanine, I've scored it also at 1 centimeter, but because floorboards are not quite as big as decking, I'm going to be dividing those at 7 centimeter increments to go across the floor. I'm going to try and make them so that they all line up, but obviously it looks nicer if they're not lining up completely. So with doing the 7 and then just offsetting it a tiny bit. So I'm going to be just using the point of my compass, and I'm scoring a wood pattern. I'm using the Mars Black Deep Red and Medium Yellow, and I'm just going to put a blob of each of the colours onto my piece of cardboard and then smear it around. I've got my paints like that, and then we're just going to mix them and just spread them. So you get a lot of nice different shades going through. A little bit dark for what I want, so I'm going to just add some more yellow. So I've gone for a slightly darker colour on the porch, and I'm going to put a wee bit more yellow in this one just to lighten it just a little bit more. So I'm quite happy with those two colours. Now just wait for them to dry. If you found this video helpful or you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up. Really appreciate it if you would subscribe. Thank you so much for watching.